right, hey, good morning, y'all. It is Sunday morning, and I am super excited about today because we got a potluck a little bit later. I got some short ribs going over there in the slow cooker, and we're screening a documentary called Sacred Cow. I've read the book a couple of times, and the book is awesome, so I'm just assuming the documentary is going to be really great too. But this is a documentary that's been a long time in the making. Diana Rogers, Rob Wolf, have put this together, and really what they're doing here is they're making an argument for animal foods and meat specifically. And in this documentary, or at least in the book, and I'm sure in the documentary too, they address all the different concerns that most people bring up and all the objections that a lot of people bring up. So we talk about nutritional value of animal foods that are conventional raised versus pasture raised, organic raised. And then they also do a really good job at addressing the nutritional needs of human beings and the ethical and environmental considerations or objections that most people bring up. So I'm very, very excited for this because I feel like it's one of those documentaries I'll be able to refer a lot of my clients to and people that go through our progressions to help them feel more comfortable with eating animal foods. So I'll give you all an update after we go through that process. But anyway, what I wanted to share with you today, it's Sunday. I was trying to think about what's been useful that we've talked about over the past few days that I can share with you guys. And we had our fourth meeting yesterday in the Mastering Real Food for a Lifetime Progression. And at this meeting, we talked about self-testing and cultivating, developing a honed intuition about what's good for your body by paying attention to how you feel and respond to specific foods or being without specific foods. And as a preface to that, we had this really great discussion, a very open, honest, genuine conversation around what it takes to make a change and the conversations that you have with yourself when you go off plan. So I just want to share some bullet points associated with what we talked about, and I'll probably go a little bit more in depth this week and do a separate video on it. But here's the nuts and bolts of it. First of all, we talked about what does it take to make change? Well, first of all, I think it's very helpful to have your values in place, to sit down and think about what are my values, what are important to me as a person, what is the kind of person that I want to be, and what is my vision of my most optimal, healthful self. And when you start to get clear on what your values are and what your vision of your optimal self is, then it becomes very clear about what the things are that you want to see change, right? So acknowledging your values, creating a vision for yourself for vibrant, optimal health, and then thinking about what are the things that I want to see change to move me in this direction to get me closer to my vision. And then you have to figure out what are the rules I'm going to follow. Like, okay, now I know I want to make these changes, but how am I going to do it? And when it comes to health, I mean, we talked about it yesterday. We feel like the SHT is such a great methodology because it's not really even a methodology, it's a way of life. I told this little story where when, like most people, before I found the gift of this thing that we're all part of right now, I went in and out of so many different diets, it was ridiculous. And I was like so many other people, I would see a little bit of results, but I wasn't committed to it. I didn't fully believe in it or understand it. The results were fleeting. It was difficult to adhere to. And so over time, I bounced in and out of diets, seeing temporary results, but long-term, my results were always on this downward decline until I hit my worst, like in my mid-30s. And that's what made me really question what it is that I thought was healthy. And then, once I got on this path, I moved to Vegas. I started cultivating this business and this passion around sharing this information with other people. I remember about 2 years in, I had this realization. I was like, man, I haven't gone off. Like, I haven't had a desire to go off. I'm no longer in a diet. This is my way of life. And I'm not perfect with it, but I don't have those same negative feelings that I did with the restrictive dieting eating that I was doing before finding this way of life. And that was such a great realization because then it was like, man, this is what I want to share with other people, is that you can actually commit to something that is a way of life for a lifetime that doesn't feel restrictive, although you do have some rules, and it gives you everything that you're looking for. So early on, I learned to cultivate this really positive self-dialogue with myself about my moments when I went off plan. And then since then, like I've just noticed, like a lot of people are on different parts of the spectrum about how they talk to themselves about going off. So that's what I really want to share is how you handle those challenging moments. So again, to create change, we have a vision for ourselves. We acknowledge what it is we want to see change. We adhere to some guidelines. We follow some rules to get there. And then we have to have this conversation with ourselves about, like, what do I do when I go off? Or what do I do when I don't hit the mark? Or what do I do when I have a challenging situation? And I think there's a huge difference between acknowledging and accepting what you've done and how it makes you feel with a desire to do things a little bit better versus resisting what has happened and or beating yourself up about it and or rationalizing it, which ends up leading to not really doing anything about it. And that rationalizing, by the way, can be a very slippery slope. So the big question is, like, what do you do when you go off? How do you handle the self-talk and the self-dialogue when you go off? Acknowledging this is how we create change. We have to accept that we are where we are. I think it's very helpful to have this positive attitude with yourself about, like, I am very happy with myself. I'm happy with where I am. I'm happy and proud of what I've done to get to this point and my effort as far as my health habits go right now. And I'm not content with where I am because I want to be better in all these different areas. So then the question is, how do I handle these challenging moments? And we talked about a few different scenarios. Some people pre-plan going off, and they're totally fine with that, and I think that's great. You know, sometimes I'll check in with someone and I'll say, hey man, how's the real food going? You know, how's health? And someone that has a good relationship with this and has found balance would say something like, you know, man, things are going great. We found a really good sweet spot. You know, we're 80%, 90% eating real food the way that you taught us, loving it, feeling great, but we also allow ourselves to have a pizza once a month, or we allow ourselves to have our favorite donut or croissant once every couple of weeks or something like that. I think that's awesome, all right, because you have contemplated how you're going to go off and what you're going to do, and you're totally fine with it and you accept it. You don't beat yourself up about it, right? The other end of that spectrum is when we self-denigrate. You know, it's like we go off and we beat ourselves up about it. Like we're disappointed in ourselves. We hate ourselves for it. We hate the fact that we did it. We hate the way that we feel. And sometimes this can lead to staying off for a significant period of time, because a lot of us have this perfectionist mindset. We throw our hands up, and if we can't get it completely right all the time or for a specified period of time, then we completely derail ourselves. And I think that's what we're looking to avoid, is that negative self-talk. And it really just takes a perception shift and a pre-intention about how you're going to handle these challenging situations. So what I think is ideal is you go into these situations before they happen and you just have this conversation with yourself that, hey, look, I am very happy with myself. I am very happy with everything about me and how far I've come and what I've done to get here. And I'm really happy with my effort and my diligence and just the fact that I'm engaged in trying to make a change here. And so when I have these challenging moments, I know they're going to happen because they happen for all of us. And when they happen, I realize that there is no failure, there's only feedback. Every one of these challenging moments is going to be a learning opportunity for me. I'm going to practice love and kindness to myself and just recommit to re-engaging and getting back on and trying to do my best again. And I think that's a much better way of handling your difficult and challenging situations. So, you know, hopefully that's useful. I think the big takeaway from this is that, first of all, I think it's a good thing to be very happy with yourself and at the same time not content with where you are, because that's what fuels the fire to make you do things to get better. But we want to make sure that we have a healthy relationship with our trying and challenging situations. So think about what your values are, what your vision of your optimal self is, what are the changes you want to accomplish, what are the rules and guidelines you're going to want to follow. Again, if it's food and nutrition, health, sleep, meditation, mindfulness, we'd recommend the SHT because we feel like we're the best of all worlds and we're a very livable thing for a lifetime. But figure out what your rules are going to be, and then figure out how you're going to handle your challenging and difficult situations. If you're going to pre-plan and allow yourself to indulge, that's perfectly fine. Just be very careful that it doesn't turn into a slippery slope and you don't rationalize doing it more and more often. And then also decide on how you're going to handle your challenging moments when you go off but you didn't plan to. What's that conversation going to be in your mind and your head? And again, it needs to be something along the lines of, there is no failure, there's only feedback. Nobody's perfect. This is something that I can use to help me understand how to improve what I'm doing to make myself just a little bit better in the future. All right, now, it is Sunday. Make it a great week. Make sure you put some intention into what you're going to be doing for the week. A little intention goes a long way. All right, so think about what you're doing with your food. Most of us pretty much got the mornings and midday figured out. So for a lot of us, it's really planning what are our evening meals. We love the leftovers method, meaning that every other night you make enough food for 2 nights, and that way you're eating for 2 nights and you're only cooking maybe 3 days a week. All right. When are you working out? How often you're going to work out? What days? What specific times you're going to make class? And definitely try to find some time for some quiet time in the morning, because that sets the tone for the day and it sets the tone for your life. You know, thinking about what are your values, what are your vision for yourself, how do you want to live your life and show up. We had a good conversation this past week with a couple of people acknowledging that the reason the morning is so good is because you are not impacted by anything yet. You don't have caffeine in your system, you don't have any other stimulants or drugs or prescription drugs, whatever. And you also don't have any external environmental factors that are influencing you. So the stress of the day, conversations, emails, text messages, social media posts, you are in this pristine state, and that is a great time to sit and have some quiet time with yourself and set some intentions, okay? So make it a great week, y'all. I hope that's useful. We'll talk to y'all soon.